Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new chapter of Old Man Brad. Whether you are new to the show or returning for another chapter, thank you so much for giving this little horror podcast a listen. And if you love the show, drop me a review over on your favorite podcast app. I would love to hear what you think of the show. So this chapter, I have another anthology film for you. Anyone who listens to the show knows that I've said it many times. I really enjoy anthology films, horror anthology films. My good friend Drew from the Real Feels podcast and I are big fans of them. He's come on the show a few times to talk horror anthologies. But this week, I'm talking about a Screambox exclusive, Body Parts. Not to be confused with the 1991 film Body Parts starring Jeff Fahey. Has nothing to do with that movie. Although I would recommend checking out that 1991 film. It's actually quite enjoyable. But this one is a Korean film, horror anthology, 5 stories, and we'll dig into that in just 1 minute. But before I do, I want to say if you're in the Cincinnati area, come out to Frightful Fridays on the 3rd Friday of the month. I'm so thankful to be partnered with the Esquire Theater to host a horror screening each month. And our screening for August is I Know What You Did Last Summer. I'm really excited to host this screening. I'm a big fan of the 90s teen slashers that came out. There were so many good ones and some bad ones, but I Know What You Did Last Summer is definitely one of the tops. But come out August 16th, 10 p.m., and let's watch a movie together. It's time to talk Body Parts.
아버지께 선물 올려.
아버지 육신에서 피가 흐르시고 들으시고 보시고 향기를 맡으시고 말씀하시는 그때 우리가 영원한 고통에서 구원받을 수 있습니다.
교주가 원하는 게 돈이 아닐 수도 있을 것 같습니다. 난 썩은 데가 나는데? 내 나게 안 들 거면 그딴 데 잘라봐서 빨리 이 집에서 나오라고! 당장!
A young reporter infiltrates an unnamed religious group. Invited to a special ceremony, she witnesses strange things happening in the prayer house. 5 sacrifices and 5 stories offered by the church members. When the story is over, she too must make a sacrifice. Like I said, this is a Screambox exclusive. And right up top, I'm going to say I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a very, very good anthology. 5 stories that weave together with this one story of this young reporter that weaves through, that kind of connects them all. For the most part, each story, they kind of ramped up one better than the other. I don't think there was any of these 5 stories within this anthology that I just hated. Sometimes there's the anthology films that you get, and some stories are better than others. That always happens. But sometimes you get, it starts off strong, and then it just dips down the further down you get. This one does not. The last story maybe isn't the strongest of them all, but it's still pretty good. So, like I said, this film is a young reporter who comes into this religious group. She's recording. She has someone on the outside talking to her, and she's trying to infiltrate this group to find out their secrets. Each story is, it starts off with a sacrifice or an offering or something of that sort in this religious. They say a prayer, and then it cuts to the story. Like the first story is called Stink. It's a woman who finds a perfume bottle in an old desk, and it smells really good. But then some dark forces happen, and she eventually, things start to stink, and she tries to get rid of them, and it gets bloody, and it is a very well done little story. It's not super long, but it really kicked off the tone of what we were going to get throughout this anthology, and I loved it. There's a scene towards the end of this first short. I'm going to keep this spoiler free. There's a scene where someone comes out and she had done something, but it's just really well done, really good. This first one was just really good and really set me up for wanting more. Like after this, I was like, I'm all in. Let's go. In between each of these 5 stories, we cut back to the reporter in this religious group. Each person, they basically kind of have like a box with their offering or sacrifice or whatever it's called. And whatever is in their box ties into the story we just saw. So you don't see what it is. They give their prayer, it jumps into the story, and then after the story, you see what was in the box, and then it is offered. So Stink was the first story. The second story, The Boy Who Sees Ghosts. This is a man who is bullied by a gang because he says he can see ghosts, and they're making fun of him. And so he wants to prove them wrong and show them. And he really, really messes with them, kind of like a hallucination in a way. And the ghosts come out and they see these ghosts. And it kind of reminds me, some of these ghosts remind me of the movie 13 Ghosts, where they're vengeful, they're mean, they're angry, and they will mess you up. This one is probably my favorite of the 5 stories. I really like this one. I think because I really like 13 Ghosts, and it kind of, parts of it gave me a feel of 13 Ghosts. And I loved how the ghosts came after these people and how it just kind of like a hallucination on the way down until we get to what ultimately happens and we get our offering for the box. So our third story, exorcism.net. This one started off, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe this one might end up not being my favorite, but overall it turned out really good. It's this girl who has a friend who is possessed. So they're going to do a live stream to exorcise the demons. So she gets some friends together. They're going to do a live stream. They have the camera on their friend who is possessed, and they're going to do an exorcism online. And if you've ever seen any exorcism movie, whether it's The Exorcist or something else, shit starts to happen when you mess with the demon inside. And this is no different. Like I said, it started off, I wasn't sure I was going to like it because of the way it's set up, but then it got going and I was hooked in. I'm not sure how long the short was because I was really into watching it. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Things twist and turn throughout. It gets dark and deadly. And then we lead to our sacrifice. We've got our 3 stories so far. Stink, A Boy Who Sees Ghosts, exorcism.net, and the next one, The Former Resident. It is another ghost story. A woman has a housewarming party, and this older woman comes to the house, knocks on the door, and kind of forces her way in, and warns her not to take talismans off the wall in her house, or the old residents will come back. Of course, people don't always listen. People are dumb. They don't listen. They're like, yeah, whatever. And then things get dark and twisted and spiraling out of control. Another great story. This one might be my second favorite of them. So the 2 ghost stories basically are my 2 favorite. But like I said, I love them all in different ways. They're very strong stories. The weakest piece of this entire movie is the main story that weaved in between these 5 stories, to tell you the truth. Like, the stories themselves were great. The main story was just okay. So our last story is String, and it's kind of like a Saw-esque trap. A man wakes up with a cable around his neck. He finds out that it's attached to someone in another room, and then a timer goes off, and they have to try to figure out how to stop the timer before something happens. They stop the timer, but then it resets, and it's just this loop, and they're trying to get out of this room. It's very Saw-inspired. Out of all 5 of these stories, it's the one that I liked the least, but it was still good. They all had top-notch production quality. They were all just solid stories. And then when you get to the end, you jump back to the reporter woman, and things get twisted and dark. There's an ending that happens that I thought was just, I don't think it quite had the punch I wanted it to. I think I wanted a little bit more from it. It's good. It didn't hit. It kept it from going, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. It kept it from taking a 3.5 to just giving it just maybe a 4. It's kind of borderline. This is an anthology film that I think I would definitely watch again for sure. And if it ever hits physical media, I will add it to my collection. Very, very enjoyable anthology film. If you have Screambox or access to Screambox, if you don't, get Screambox. Go watch Body Parts over on Screambox. And there's so much more that you should check out over there, like Here for Blood, Onyx Fortuitous, and Talisman of Souls. There's another anthology film that you should check out over on Screambox too. When you're on there, it's called Visitors. But yeah, go watch Body Parts. Highly recommended. And if you see it, let me know what you thought of it. See if it hit the same way for you as it did for me. As I head out, give you a movie, another movie or two that you can watch at home besides Body Parts, obviously. And Visitors, which I just told you about. Another one that you should watch on Screambox is called The Anchor. This is another foreign film that is really good about a news anchor who gets a call from a mother saying that a man has broken into her house. And it's this suspenseful, spiraling, like horror thriller. Highly recommend checking that out. So there you go. There are some movies for you to watch at home. Body Parts, Visitors, The Anchor. That should set you up very good for the week. That will do it for another chapter of Old Man Brad. Just subscribe to the show and you will never miss any chapter of the show. I will be back with a brand new Tales from Tubi later this week. I have a special guest for this one. The killer horror critic is guesting with me as we talk the Tubi original killer body count. So you won't want to miss that discussion. It will be out later this week, but if you subscribe, you'll never miss any of these. Just snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.